Welcome to Quest Xian, the how-to real answers. Explain it all. Maybe it doesn't mean what they say. God-trusting, Bible-believing, saved by Jesus church. And I am Pastor Scott Conway, a fan of Disney and a fan of weddings. And so it is no great surprise that I have been enjoying watching Disney's fairy tale weddings. Now, one of the things I have watched recently is about this man who has gotten involved with a woman who already has a child. And as the relationship progresses and as the relationship gets much more serious and he decides he wants to propose, he talks to the woman's father and he gets the father's blessing to ask it for his daughter's hand in marriage. And the woman's father talks about just how wonderful this man is for his daughter and how wonderful this man is for his grandchild. And as things unfold, we find out that the man just adores the daughter as well. And that as they get married, they are creating a family, that there's going to be a man and a woman raising this child together. Now, I am a huge fan of the idea that the step parent is a parent, and that if you're going to get married to someone who is raising a minor child, that you are signing on to join a parenting partnership. And that if you have a child and you are getting married, that you are forming a parenting partnership with this man or this woman that you are about to marry. But there's something conspicuously missing from this special. And that's that presumably somewhere in the mix, this girl has a biological father, but we're not told anything about that person. So somewhere out there, of course, at some point, there was a man and a woman who got together and they conceived this child together. And this woman has presumably custody or primary custody, perhaps sole custody of this child. Now, of course, it is entirely possible that the girl's father has died. It's also possible that the woman never told the man whose biological child this girl is that he has a child. We don't know. We simply do not know. It is not part of the story that is shared with us. But it does cause me to reflect on this idea of a package deal. Because very often we forget, and it would seem bizarre that we forget, but we really do seem to forget that the way you make a baby is with sex. And that any man and woman who are of reasonably fertile years, which for a man is pretty much all of them, and for a woman, she has a sense of her range from the beginning of her period to the end of her menopause, where she can potentially get pregnant, where sex, intercourse, that penis and vagina intercourse can create a baby. And this doesn't just create a pregnancy. It doesn't just lead to a baby, that this baby then becomes a child, then becomes a tween, a teen, an adult. And that you can be forever bound to this person that maybe perhaps was intended simply to be a one-night stand. Because sex is one of the most powerful examples we have of a true package deal. And one of the package deal components of this has to do with my primary question I ask particularly young people about their sexual activity is, what's the plan for pregnancy? And usually the plan for pregnancy is something along the lines of, well, that won't happen. This is okay. Well, hey, I'm all in favor of that not happening, because one of the things as we talk about sex is I am not as concerned with who does what with whose body. That provided we're dealing with consenting adults, do what you want with who you want. However, the question I keep coming back to, that when you have a man and you have a woman and they have childbearing years, that you could make a baby here. And if you do, what's the plan? Because ultimately, once there's another innocent life involved, it's kind of good to have some idea what that plan is going to be. And with stunning regularity, people get pregnant without meaning to. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't have sex willingly. That doesn't mean that they didn't consent to the behavior that led to the baby. All that meant was their plan was to not make a baby, but then they made a baby. Now, if you want some sense of how often this is happening, you can look at the total number of pregnancies that occur in the United States of America right now. The last I looked at the numbers, I took a look at the total number of births to married women. And my presumption is that if you have a husband and a wife and they're already married, when the baby's born, that whether or not the pregnancy was intentionally pursued, that they're okay with it, that they understood that part of being a husband and a wife is also being a father and a mother, and that engaging in the marital relationship can very often lead to becoming parents together. But one of the assumptions that I make is that the births to an unmarried woman is probably much less desired, that it wasn't her intention to be a single mother, that for the most part, just as of course there are some married couples that had no intention to have children, or had an intention to have 1 or 2 children and ended up with 3 or 4 children, there are some unmarried women that really did want to have that baby, that they meant to get pregnant. I mean, maybe they didn't know exactly at which moment and with which person, but the idea of having a child and being a single mother was something that they pursued. But for the most part, my assumption is that most husbands, or most mothers, most fathers would rather have their children born into a committed 2-parent household, that they would rather have a loving partner that they chose to be a parenting partner with, so that they could raise their child together, working as a team. And of course, if there was an abortion, my assumption is the pregnancy was obviously unwanted. Well, when you total the number of births to unmarried women plus the number of abortions that occur, and you compare that number to the number of births to married women, we find that roughly half of all pregnancies are presumptively unwanted. And if half of all pregnancies are presumptively unwanted, that means that people specifically intending to engage in the sexual behavior without having a baby are as successful at conceiving children as those who are married and engaging in sexual behavior with the understanding that that's how we make babies. So therefore, the idea of sex as a package deal becomes enormously important, because one tends to come with the other. And so as we talk about package deals with the bump and divorce and men as well, to consider part of our metaphor is the reality of sex as a package deal. And so right now, as I'm recording this, I'm still 55 years old. And as a 55-year-old man, if I'm engaging in sexual intercourse with a woman of childbearing years, that she's premenopausal, that she hasn't gone through menopause, there exists some possibility that she could get pregnant. And if there's the more ideal conception ages in the 20s and the 30s, as opposed to the 40s and maybe early 50s, that pregnancy is more likely. So my ex and I were having unprotected sex with one another for the whole last year of our marriage, and if she had gotten pregnant in there, we were perfectly prepared to raise a child together. That her pregnancy would have actually been a solution to some of the external forces we were dealing with, because that would have changed the rubric. And we understood that when we were no longer making use of birth control and that she was perimenopausal, that means that she is still ovulating. It's less likely at her age, in her middle to late 40s at the time, that she was going to conceive, but we did understand it as a distinct possibility. And that That was part of the package deal. And part of the package deal has to do with what is the level of fertility, what is the level of probability when a woman in her middle to late 40s is engaging in sexual intercourse. And it's a package deal. Now, when you're in your teens, when you're in your 20s, the probability of conception is significantly higher than someone who's perimenopausal. And so perimenopausal is kind of that phase of life kind of going into menopause where things are shifting, but it's not quite menopause yet. And it's a phase of life that, as of the time I'm recording this, we don't have a lot of understanding of, other than shifts are occurring. But it's still a package deal that until menopause is complete, until the period of fertility is done, the creation of a joined bloodline continues to exist. Now, notice I emphasize joined bloodline, because even at my age, if as a man I were to engage in a sexual relationship with, say, a 35-year-old woman, and she conceives and now she's pregnant, and imagine the decision now is to keep the baby, and that I decide that I need to be involved. And even if I don't want to be involved, I may be held financially responsible. And so in that sense, I still end up involved. And it's not just that I'm 55 and she's 35 and there's a baby, because once the baby's born, the baby is going to grow up. And then we together, jointly or separately, or as a team or as separate teams, if, say, I were to get married, now there's a stepmother. And if she was to get married to someone else, there's a stepfather. And now there's 4 of us involved in the raising of this child. And then suppose this child continues to grow up, and then we're dealing with the dating. And then ultimately we're dealing with the child's husband or wife, the child's adult future, and that we have grandchildren through this child, and that the entire normal and natural consequences of the flow of generations could all come from what we intended to just be a night of fun. And if we understand that there's a lot of things in life that work this way, that there's package deals, then we can approach a lot of life and understand that as we come into these package deals, as we take a look and understand kind of more of a larger totality of the circumstances, to think about the decisions that we're making, to think about the things that go along with the things that we want or the things that we don't want. And that the normal and natural things that are part of the package ought to be part of our decision making. Now, of course, I've just talked about sex as one. A related important one is if you get involved with someone who already has a child, that child is part of the package. So I have a close lady friend that I've recently reconnected with, who is in the early stages of a relationship with a man, not me, but she still has 2 minor children. So she's not just looking at this in terms of, well, do I like him? She's also looking in terms of, is he good for my children? Because she knows she's a package deal. Now, I don't know the man. I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. So I don't know to what extent he's looking at it. And he's thinking, okay, I understand there's a package here, that I'm not seeking a relationship with a woman. I am seeking a relationship with a woman and a potential stepfathering relationship with the kids, and that they have a father who is still involved in the picture. And how is that going to work? And sometimes part of the package deal questions come down to the thinking about, who am I dealing with as the ex-husband? Who am I dealing with as the ex-wife? Who am I dealing with as the other parent? Who am I dealing with as the other step-parent? Because again, if I marry a woman with a kid, I'm a stepfather, she's the mother. And if the biological father is married, well, then we have then a father and a stepmother. Now we have 4 people who may have 2 to 4 or more different parenting philosophies that are all trying to raise this one child or this one set of children. And then how complex it can get when you start to deal with multiple children from multiple parents. So say if I were to get involved with a woman who has children from, two different men. When I was working in the jail system as a counselor and a lawyer, one of the women I was working with, we were trying to arrange things with her kids because she was going to jail or prison now for a long time. She was leaving the jail and heading off to prison for probably 7 years. And we were trying to make sure her kids got taken care of. Well, she had 5 children from 4 different men. And the biological fathers in the state of California had kind of almost right of first refusal. And as it ultimately it worked out, the father of the 2 kids was going to take 3 of the kids, and the father of one of the other kids was going to take the other 2 kids, and the remaining fathers either didn't know or didn't want to be involved. I wasn't entirely clear because I wasn't the attorney organizing it. I was helping the woman understand what the child services was doing with the children. And so I was kind of coordinating on that side, not on the other side. But that gets me one of the things where there's a package deal there. So if someone is getting involved with a woman like that, as obviously multiple men did, you would be dealing with a woman who has 5 children, and then you have 4 biological fathers who also have rights and responsibilities with these children. And so the package deal becomes increasingly complex. And of course, if you're engaging in a sexual relationship, the probability of having more children with her also exists. Package deal. So package deal, package deal, package deal, to be thinking about these things. And so one of the other things I want to get into on package deals as a concept is men. That there's a lot of things that from men, and of course 2 men are part of package deals. So I have had women in my office kind of in the dating phase, and part of what they're looking for is they want a man who makes good money. And that's reasonable if you want to have a family, that you want a man who can pay the bills. And so that if you want to stay home and you want to be the stay-at-home mother raising your children, you want to have a man who can support the household so that you can stay at home and raise the children. Now, in particular, I did a lot of work in the homeschool community. And so in doing work in the homeschool community, the part that a parent needs to be home in order to be able to homeschool the kids. If there's no parent at home, there is no homeschool because there's no one at home to school because both of the parents are at work. And so it is completely reasonable if a man and a woman have this idea that, well, we want to raise our children in a homeschooling environment, that means they expect to live off of one income. Well, also sometimes what I have talked to women about is, they want a man who is a full participant in the household, who does, that they split all of the household chores and they split the parenting. And sometimes what they don't realize is, okay, so you're asking for a one income man. Now note that I was pastoring in Southern California. So a man who makes one income that is strong enough to be able to support a wife and children, staying at home, wife and children, in Southern California, which is one of the most expensive places to live. And you want him to have 50-50 responsibility with the person who stays home full time. And sometimes trying to understand kind of what she's thinking, because she's thinking in individual pieces, like, well, we're both grown-ups and both of us know how to cook and both of us know how to clean and both of us know how to do this, and and we're both parents, and so we should both be participating, and somehow overlooking the fact that, but if only one of you has a job, then shouldn't that skew the other way? Because if one of you is working 40 to 60 hours a week, while the other one doesn't have an outside of the home paid job, why is the one who's working 40 to 60 hours a week outside of the house have the equal responsibilities at home? And beginning to get a better grasp of the package deal. Now, in particular, now I don't know the extent to which this is true everywhere, but it was certainly true where I was coaching, counseling, and pastoring, and it is true in a lot of professions of the people I work with, is in order to be very successful, you're not typically working 40 hours a week. Now, in the lawyering profession, it is not at all unusual that beginning attorneys are expected to put in as many as 200 billable hours a month. Now, to put in 200 billable hours a month, you're okay. So you're looking at what, 40 to 50 hours a week, depending on the length of the month. And you think, okay, well, a 50-hour work week, that's not too bad. Well, to produce 50 billable hours doesn't typically take 50 hours. Very often, to produce 50 billable hours, you might be putting in 75 to 100 actual hours. Even just as simple a thing as adding your commutes, that changes the equation. And so if you're getting involved in a relationship with someone who, as I shared in the previous message, the gentleman who was an attorney was really working diligently to work his way up in the firm to be able to provide for his family. That if he's working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, sometimes 16 hours a day, where if he's awake, he's working. And that's just what his life is like. That doesn't allow for a whole lot of participation in the relationship and in the parenting and in the household chores, because anyone who's trading time for money knows that you can end up trading an awful lot of time. And when you're trading an awful lot of time, it creates a fairly dramatic imbalance. And you have to figure out how you're going to do that, because it's a package deal. That people who work a lot of overtime in order to bring home more money are therefore working overtime. They're working more than 8 hours in a day. They're working more than 40 hours in a week. And if there's a commute on top of that, and that commute is even 30 minutes each way, add another 5 hours a week. If that commute is an hour each way, then add 10 hours a week. And so depending upon what the commutes are looking like, and also depending upon the nature of the profession, whether there's any travel involved, and all of that, is when you're looking for one thing, that one thing you're looking for that might be very desirable very often comes bundled with another thing. So it's important to be thinking about package deals. It's very important to think about, okay, what else comes along with that thing that I'm looking for? That if I'm engaging in a sexual relationship, well, part of the package with that is you're taking a risk of creating a new life. Now, notice how rarely I talk about sexually transmitted infections, because at least the people involved in the activity are the ones who have a consequence. But when you talk about creating a new life, starting a new bloodline, having a child that's going to grow up to be a man or a woman and perhaps have their own partners and their own children. And now you've chosen the person to be a parent with, whether you meant to or not. You've chosen the person to be a grandparent with, whether you meant to or not. You've chosen the person that now you're bound to for as long as all of you shall live. Now, even if, say, there's a marriage and the marriage ends, and we talk about, for as long as you both shall live. Well, the child is, so long as all of you are alive, all of you are tied to each other at some level. And so sex is a non-trivial behavior, and that we need to keep in mind that that's how babies are made. And that when we're picking our relationships, that people are a package deal. Now, from the obviousness of, if someone already has a child, they're part of a package deal. But also, just the more simple things, obvious things, that if you're getting involved in someone who is committed to a career, well, that takes time. That may have financial potential, but that money is made at the expense of time, at the expense of energy. Now, depending upon the nature of the profession. The nature of a profession could be made at the expense of control over one's schedule. So I had a family that the husband was a doctor. Well, when he's on call, he's on call. And in particular, I was having a conversation where they went to the movies 3 separate times before they actually got to see the whole movie, because the first 2 times during the movie, he got a call and he had to go because that's part of his job. Now, do you think that they enjoyed having the income of a successful medical professional? That part worked out pretty good for them. But they didn't always like the schedule that was involved, because that's what the schedule is. I was talking or listening more to a pastor's wife. And one of the challenges is that was a 2-income household. Well, a lot of her pastor husband's ministry takes place in the evenings because he's working with a lot of college and career age people. Well, college age, you can do things at more daytime times, but when you're talking about people in career ages, well, you're mostly talking about people who are working full time and typically working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so when you're running ministries that include these people, that very often means you're doing evening activities because you're doing things that happen after work. Well, the wife was also working full time Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And what she was finding is over the course of a couple of years, how rarely she got to spend any real time with her husband, because it was rare that an evening would go by and that he doesn't have any pastor responsibilities with small groups or Bible studies or some kind of a training or doing visitations. And of course, Sunday is church day and there's stuff to do all Sunday. And Saturdays was like the only opportunity they had to really do anything. And very often it was so filled with errands and so filled with chores that they got very little time together. And she felt it's hard as a pastor's wife to ask your pastor's husband to spend less time doing his ministry and more time when you're a Christian woman competing with God, complaining that your pastor husband is serving God too much and that you want him to serve God less to serve you more. Like, that doesn't sound like something that's very easy for a good Christian wife to say. And all of that unfolded in one tearful night when it all just came pouring out all of a sudden. And that pastor husband realized that he was messing up and that he needed to invest himself in his relationship with his wife. Now, he had some time with his kids because the nature of his flexibility allowed him to see his kids in the afternoon, but then he was off to go do his evening ministry work, very often just kind of passing mom as they came and went. Package deal. And in that particular case, it's realizing, what is my package? How am I showing up? And am I packaged well? Because I need to figure out how I'm showing up. What's my package? And in that particular case, that pastor husband realized the package he had created didn't really offer much time to connect with his wife. And he needed to make some changes. And by the way, he did. Part of it was a simpler thing as Monday and Tuesday became his nights off. That he had a weekend that was always included Monday and Tuesday night, as well as still having some time on Saturdays. Now, he would work more often during the weekends, but he specifically built in a simple goal of have time alone with just my wife. So it's not have time with the family. He already had some of that. He had time with the kids. He had kind of time in passing with his wife, but it was always in the context of mommy and daddy with the kids. And he changed the way he packaged his career so that he could both fulfill his responsibilities and prioritize being a good husband, as well as working together to be parents. Package deal. Now, we've talked about sex as a package. You need to think about when you go in. We've talked about kind of the package deal when you're getting involved with someone else. But here we're thinking about what is the package that you make yourself into? What is the package deal you show up with? What is the package, the balance of all of the things that you bring to the table is what you have that you're offering. Now, this involves your own career, going to your job. So if I'm going to prioritize my wife and I'm going to prioritize my kids, and I'm going to take time off of work for the this and that and the travel over here and the taking care of stuff over there, then I need to know that. And maybe my employer needs to know that. So this is another professional package deal thing. I was working with one of my clients. We had to let one of the gentlemen go. Now, he was a really good worker. The problem we had with him was whether or not he would show up for work. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. We had the conversation with him. Now, he had a really good reason for why he was late when he was late. And he was willing to stay late to make up the hours because he was taking care of his elderly father who had Alzheimer's dementia. And every once in a while, his father would take off and go wandering off, and he had to go find his dad. Now, we think that's fantastic. But the job that he had was to be part of a 4-person team. And if he wasn't there, it idled the team. Now, he can't schedule when his dad's going to get away from him before he can get his father to where his father's taken care of during the day. And he just knows that, it's time to go and dad's vanished again. And so he might be, half an hour late, an hour late. He might miss the whole morning. Well, meanwhile, you have 3 other people who are getting paid on job completion. They get paid on this thing being done. It's a project pay, not an hourly pay. And so the scheduling has to get the team there. And so it's not fair to the other 3 people that they can't make money and that their entire day is being thrown off. And it's not fair to the clients who have a window of time open when they are expecting the team to be there doing their job. And so ultimately, in that particular case, we still let the gentleman go. Actually, we let him quit the job, taking responsibility for the fact that he really didn't have control over his schedule. We gave him a letter of recommendation with the caveat, as we explained to him, is that a potential employer needs to understand what your situation is. And those who could work with it, and if we could have worked with that, we would have been happy to. But the nature of that particular business ran in 4-man teams. Well, he found a job at another company that did similar work where he could work by himself. So that way, if he's late, well, that's okay. If he's an hour late, he just works an hour later. If he's 2 hours late, he just works 2 hours later. And that he had the flexibility and he did good work. But part of it for him was understanding he was a package deal. In his case, it wasn't, as we talked about before, where what's the package of someone who has a career ambition? Well, that's often going to cost them time. In this case, it's like, what is the package of being someone who's taking care of an elderly father who periodically wanders off? And part of that package is I can't always guarantee I'm going to show up at a particular place at a particular time, because if my father wanders off, I've got to take care of my father, and that means I can't show up there. And that if we understand what we are as package deals, that then helps us seek out better partnership. Now, divorce is a package deal. Well, there's some things where divorce even comes about sometimes because of how packages worked out. So when I do a wedding, it's to love, to honor, to cherish, or to love, to honor, and to obey. It's to have and to hold. It's being partners, not opponents, for richer or poorer, sickness and health. It's that whole better or worse thing. It's the forsaking all others. It's making your partner the primary relationship. It's cleaving. It's mean there's a my way and there's a your way, and we're going to create an our way out of it. And that's the deal. For long as we both shall live. And if we need to change the deal, we negotiate the change, that we collaboratively create a new deal. Well, very often the way it ends up working out is someone just flat out skips out on the deal. They unilaterally change part of the deal. Well, that wasn't the deal. And sometimes part of the package of doing things that violate the deal is that you lose the deal. Sometimes some of the things that you do that you thought was just a momentary behavior comes with it the package probability, kind of like sex makes babies. Certain types of conflict and certain types of deal breaking makes divorces. And sometimes you can have a very amicable divorce because the competing values as they manifest in a marriage, and there's no fundamental responsibilities like the joint care of a minor child don't exist, and that you can have a values driven, very principled, very relational, very collaborative divorce. I have seen them. I have been through them. I am still very good friends with both of my exes, who are both still very much loved, very much honored, very much cherished. The having and the holding is gone and or adjusted to levels appropriate to a friendship. And the forsake all others, which is the primary relationship. That's if I have a wife, that means she is my primary relationship, period. She is number one. That slot is hers and hers alone. And that there can be secondary relationships and collateral relationships. I'll be somewhat careful about potentially distracting relationships. Some of those are unavoidable. One of the biggest often distracting relationships we call work, having a career, having a job. But apart from the professional relationships that necessarily sometimes pull us out due to professional obligations that are part of our job, that you can have distracting relationships that can even sometimes be family members. It can be, relatives, and it can be friends. And so we're not necessarily talking about something at a potential affair. And then there are destructive relationships that likewise could be in the same thing. And so seeking a primary relationship means that you're number one. Anyone else who comes in relationship at worst should be collateral, and at best should be a secondary, which means in support of the primary, that their presence in my life and our life helps support the primary relationship, which is the marriage. The most common place I see the primacy of the marriage violated, often with self-justification as though it's a good and righteous thing to do, is when the spouse is supplanted in favor of the children, where you stop being a wife or you stop being a husband and you become primarily a parent, and the spouse becomes the assistant to the parent, which violates primary relationship. That violates forsaking all others. And then there's cleave. We see violations of cleave sometimes, because that's leave, cleave, be one flesh. That means that we leave behind the my and the your, and we create this new our, and we are now this us together. Now there's still this individuality. I'm still me, you're still you, but we made this new us. And then again, if you use sex as a metaphor, it's like, well, he's still him and she's still her, but in that union there is this powerful thing going on that doesn't stop him from being him, it doesn't stop her from being her, but there's this new thing going on here that is different than him by himself and her by herself. And then children can result from that. And so likewise with cleaving, you're creating the family of origin where your children will grow up, that then will become part of who they are, that then they will take into their future partnerships as then they leave that and they cleave to someone else and they create a new us that will be comparative of them and their chosen partner. And it continues to ripple on down the generations. And so when we're looking back at the package deal thing, sometimes we think we're just having a fight. But the way we go about having a fight, we may think, well, we're just trying to win the argument. And that's what we're doing. We're just winning. And I'm right, you're wrong. I win, you lose. And we don't realize, okay, if we keep on doing that, if we keep being critical and judgmental and gaslighting our partner and stuff, that we might be aiming for a divorce, that there's a package involved in that sort of behavior. And when we begin to look at divorce is the legal recognition of a relationship already torn asunder. And if we understand divorce is part of the package of a torn asunder relationship, and what God has joined together, let not man put asunder. And if we don't look at the divorce as the putting asunder, we look at the divorce as the legal recognition of the asunder that has already been put. It helps us understand, okay, there's a package deal to bad behavior in marriages. That we could lose our marriage, not just lose our marital status, but typically before we lose a marital status, we will lose the marital relationship. And if we keep the marital relationship tight, the marital status takes care of itself. We don't have to worry about divorce, because I have never had anyone sit down in my office and go, oh, you know what? This wife of mine, she loves me so much. She's just honoring me just too much, and so much having, so much holding, and so much partnership. And she's just too wonderful. I need to divorce this woman. That has not happened in my office as a pastor or as a lawyer. And in the hundreds of divorces that I have been a part of as a lawyer, there was always a problem that was tearing the relationship asunder. And the divorce was a recognition of that asunder that had already been installed into the relationship. People don't end relationships because they're good. People end relationships because they're a problem. There's some kind of a significant mismatch. There's something that, at the very least, even in the most principled collaborative marriage, that there's a clear divergence taking place. And I have seen people who, they changed the marital status from married to divorced to protect their love, protect their relationship, so that they ended the status that put all these things at issue that didn't have to be at issue if they were friends, that didn't have to be at issue if they co-parented from separate households, that didn't have to be at issue if they were not married. And so divorce can be a package deal. Now, obviously, some of the things with a divorce is, if I divorce a woman, if a woman divorces me, part of that package is you lose certain authority in their life. So as a husband or as a wife, well, you're partners. That gives you certain rights and sometimes even responsibilities to make certain arguments and take certain positions and to partner and to pair and sometimes to call someone on something, because you're a partnership. But when you're an ex, sometimes you lose a right to have an opinion. Now, you may still have feelings about it. You may still have your opinion, but you don't really have a place in the person's life to tell them how they ought to do anything anymore. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't seen people want to assert that kind of authority in someone else's life and think that they still ought to be listened to. But when you get divorced, part of that package is it changes the equation. And so in a 50-50 custody situation is, okay, well, now there's a mom's house and there's a dad's house, and dad's house works on dad house rules. Mom's house works on mom house rules. And mom really doesn't have the right to tell dad what dad house rules have to be. Likewise, dad doesn't really have a right to tell mom what mom house rules have to be. Now, when mom and dad are married, and so it's their house, well, both of them have a right to have a say over what the household rules should be, because it's jointly there. It's an us house of a partnership. But a divorced mother doesn't have a right to tell her not husband, the co-parent, what the rules must be in his house, and likewise the other way around. And so part of the package of getting divorced is you lose certain rights. You lose a certain place in somebody's life. Sometimes part of the package is that, well, obviously the money changes, the property changes, but some of the other things that sometimes people don't think about is not having a partner there also changes how you have to handle all the stuff they used to do. So I've known people who literally realize, oh my God, I don't know how to do laundry. I don't know how to cook very many things. I'm eating like the same 6 foods cycling every single week. Um, and I have to go out a lot because I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to fix the this, and I don't know how to take care of the that. And well, that's part of the package is you don't have the other person there. And so as you're walking toward the end of a relationship is to think, okay, am I prepared for all that comes with this? Now, here's something, and this is kind of going into related territory with sex and divorce and men. And I'm going to use a particular story because there was a professional man, and his relationship with his wife, the mother, of his child, had been kind of for a while. And their sexual relationship had kind of faded off, as very often sexual relationships do, and it was quote unquote normal. And he had begun to get very dissatisfied in his relationship. Well, not terribly surprising. He's a reasonably still young professional man, and has contacts with young women from time to time. And turns out one of those young women was attracted to him. And not terribly surprising if the man is really very much interested in the sexual relationship and can't seem to have that with his wife anymore, and can't seem to really have a discussion with his wife about it. It's not a terrible surprise that then he ends up involved in the affair. Well, depending upon whether I'm getting his side or her side of the story, I don't really know exactly how it all unfolded. But the part that we know with some certainty is the husband and the wife got divorced. No great surprise. And then he did the classic thing of marrying the mistress, marrying the woman he was having the affair with this anticipation in his heart that now I'm going to be happy because now I'm getting all of the things that I've been really wanting and craving that my wife hasn't been sharing with me, for whatever the totality of the reasons are. Well, here gets to be part of the problem. There was a whole package there. And what he was cognizant of is what he knew he was missing. Now, was he legitimately missing a sexual relationship? Yes, he was. Is that a legitimate thing to want to have if you're married? Yes, it is. He, for whatever reason, couldn't seem to resolve that with his wife. Now, keeping in mind, she wasn't one of my counseling clients, so I don't really know what conversations were attempted and who talked to who about what and who tried to do what. But I do know what ended up happening is now he has a new wife. And with this new wife, well, she's very excited about now being married to someone who has the kind of money that he has, and that they will have a passionate sexual relationship. But you know what? She didn't do the housewife thing like his wife used to, his old wife used to. She didn't cook for the family. She didn't keep the house. All of the things that hadn't occurred to him were significant contributions of his former wife were not being taken care of by this wife, now wife, former mistress. And what he found he had was basically a dating relationship with a woman he was married to who didn't want to do any of the other domestic stuff. He just kind of took for granted that that's what a married woman does. Finds out, no, that's what that married woman did. And so the deal is different. And sometimes when we're thinking package deals, we have to keep in mind, okay, if I'm getting a package, I have a relationship, and the relationship comes with pros and cons, because nobody's perfect. No partnership has 100% fix and zero problems. Haven't seen it yet. I've seen a lot of great relationships, but every relationship has some, even as simple a thing as both people are good at something. You have to figure, okay, well, then which one of us is going to do how much of it? Sometimes you have something where neither one of you is good at it. So, well, is one of us going to learn it? Or is that going to be something we hire out? And some of those things will follow right along the gender norms that you might have expected based upon where you grew up. And sometimes it might be completely different. Like, one of the things that has been curious in my life is I'm really good at ironing. And in both of my marriages, I end up doing most of the ironing. Why? Because I'm really good at, I do a good job, and yeah, just give me something to listen to or something to watch while I do it. And I will do a brilliant job getting stuff done very, very well. And I know how to run a household. I mean, I've been a single man, and I can do all of the parts of the household, including all of the laundry stuff and put buttons back on things and all that stuff. I can follow recipes and do all of that. So for me, part of the package is I can fill in whatever gaps there are. But what happens if it gets to be too asymmetric, where now I'm doing more of it, where I am constantly in service to my lady, and she's only being taken care of? Well, if we're elderly and she's sick and I can still do stuff and she can't, okay, that would be beautiful. Well, if it's just that she just doesn't, well, that would be asymmetric. And part of it for me intentionally, right now I'm working with what I'm calling my my lot, LOT, my list of 10. And in my list of 10, I'm drawing things right out of the Yori relationship matrix system, because I'm looking at myself as a package and I'm saying, that part could stand to be upgraded as part of a package. That part could be upgraded as part of a package. I want to change this. I want to change that. Now, am I looking at a particular relationship? No. Would I like to be open to the possibility of a relationship? Maybe. But if I'm not a good deal, then what am I likely to attract? Well, the balancing counterpart. And if I am in love with a woman and I want the best for her, I should be a good deal for her. So again, package deal, building the package deal. Now, we talked about package deal, and it's bump, divorce, sex, and men. We talked about sex. We talked about men. We talked about lives and careers. We talked about divorces and marriages. Well, what about the bump, the how-to, real answers, explain it all? Maybe it doesn't mean what they say. God trusting, Bible believing, saved by Jesus church. That is a package deal too. Each element in there comes with a package. If I'm going to do, all principles must be consistently applied. That means, as I have mentioned before, if I say maybe it doesn't mean what they say, I must also acknowledge maybe it doesn't mean what I say. Maybe it doesn't mean what we say. If I'm saying that there's this range of possibilities of what it means, and this is what we think it means, it doesn't mean we're right. Just like we're saying it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean we're right. Package deal. The principles consistently applied are a package deal. Now, likewise, when we're doing the how-to, reality is more important than anything we believe. If I'm going to teach you a how-to, the how-to better do what I say it does. Now, this is part of a martial arts principle too. If I say, okay, if someone throws a punch at you, you do this. Well, then the this that you do against the punch I'm teaching you to protect yourself against, it had better do what I say it does, or I just got you punched by the bad guy. And especially if the how-to that I were to teach you made the situation worse, I'm responsible for that. And so part of the package deal of a how-to is assuming responsibility for whatever you say the how-to is supposed to do. And the how-to should accomplish what you say it accomplishes according to the terms upon which you say it accomplishes it. And so if I'm teaching you a system of forgiveness, and our 5-step forgiveness system is, middle of the memory. Well, and you may or may not already know this, but there is a 5-step forgiveness system. It has to do with middle of the memory, determine the wrong, determine the lessons, let go of the bad, and then file the bad and walk away with the good. And there's detail in there. So don't think just by hearing what the five steps are that you're good to go. But if you dive into that technique, it had better do what I say it does for the things I say it does, what I say it'll do it for, and it better work. That's part of the package deal of the assertions and the responsibilities. That I am assuming responsibility for the how-to being able to actually do what I say the how-to does. Now, if I say the how-to is probabilistic. We're shifting odds. That's what I teach for self-defense, is we're shifting the odds. That a black belt doesn't mean you're invincible now. But being a black belt means you're better prepared than you were when you were a purple belt. Being a purple belt means you're better prepared than you were when you were a white belt. And so as part of that how-to, we're saying, okay, here's how you do this that creates the shift in your odds. If I were to say that this guarantees victory, well, then it had better guarantee victory. Because if I say it guarantees victory, my how-to better be guaranteed. Now, if I say it shifts your probability, well, then what I teach you better shift your probabilities. And so the how-to, real answers, which means that if I've offered real answers, I need to give real answers. But, maybe it doesn't mean what I say. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. And explain it out, same thing. And God trusting, that means that we trust God, but what does that mean? And being able to explain that too. And Bible believing, and then, I'll say the Bible is the word of God. Our interpretation of the Bible is not the word of God. Thus, maybe it doesn't mean what they say. But that also means, well, part of the package deal of that belief means that the books have to be regarded as the right books. We can't look at the books in the Bible and say, oh yeah, well, we don't like that part. Let's toss that out. Now, could someone include a deuterocanonical? Yeah, if they want to be as expansive as possible, could they grab the Ethiopian canon and use that one? Well, if they want to. I have zero familiarity with the books in the Ethiopian canon past what is in the deuterocanonical works for the Orthodox and the Catholic churches. But the books that we have in the core 66 books of the Bible, pretty much, everyone agrees, whether you're Ethiopian, Catholic, Orthodox, and of course, obviously Protestant. And so you have to regard the books as the right books, and the words as the right words. Now, they're the right words in Greek and Hebrew, or Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, depending how detailed you want to get over exactly what we're talking about in the language. But in the original language, those are the right words. Doesn't necessarily mean the English translation is not necessarily the proper translation, but within the range of what that word could mean, we have to take something in that range. And so one of the examples I'll use sometimes, if I say something is blue, and you're going to interpret blue, you get an image in your head of what I mean by blue. If I've uttered the word blue and the picture in your head is of a very, very light pastel blue. It's so light, if it was any lighter, it'd be white. You could have a picture in your head of a navy blue or a midnight blue, or such a deep, dark blue that if it was any darker, it'd be black. You could have an idea in your head of a blue-green that might be so blue-green that some would argue that it's green, not blue. It could be something that's a blue-violet that's so blue-violet that people would argue whether it's blue or violet. And anywhere in there, from one side to the other, from dark to light, from tints and shades, could be what I mean when I say blue. If I say it was blue, well, what kind of blue? And there's this whole range of possibility within blue. But is red blue? No. Now you're in the realm of red. And if you're in the realm of red, you're not in the realm of blue. And so when you're interpreting scripture, when you're saying Bible believing, it means, okay, we believe the words in the Bible are the right words, and the books in the Bible are the right books. And we're using the core 66 books of the Protestant canon that is the undisputed primary source material for Christianity. The deuterocanonical works are disputed primary source material, but for much of Christianity, they also use that, but it's disputed primary source material. The Ethiopian church has even a larger canon than that, which is like even more broadly disputed primary source material. And depending upon what particular sect that claims Christianity, that is their self-identity, they may have other texts that they also consider significant and part of their primary source. But we can't ignore these words. And so if the words stand in conflict with our interpretation, well, it's a package deal. We have to take the good with the bad. We need some principle that we can consistently apply that allows us to deal with the words on the hard issues in a way that lets the words be the words without having to twist and turn the words to interpret blue as red. And so again, package deal. And saved by Jesus, well, we're Christians, and we say the dividing line between a Christian and non-Christian is accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior. And church is that, well, we're a church, 501c3, legally constituted, legally organized church. And that we are a body of believers. And in this online format, we're kind of a disjointed, spread out body of believers. But again, package deal. That all these things are packages. And when we come to life and we understand the extent to which things are connected in life, we understand there are package deals. I'm a package deal. You're a package deal. A job is a package deal. And sometimes we don't like all the different pieces. Sometimes we only want the part that we want. Sometimes it's like we would love the paycheck, but we would rather not have the work. We want the sex, we just don't want the baby. We want the person with the income, we just also want the person who has the income of a 70-hour-a-week professional, but we also want them to only have to work 20 hours a week. When you're dealing with package deals, the package is the package, and we have to think about the package as we make our choices and our decisions as we go. And so whether we're talking about a bump, whether you're talking about divorce, whether you're talking about whether you're creating the package of divorce by the way you're approaching your marriage relationship, when you're talking about sex and the things that come along with sex, you're talking about men and women and relationship and connection and all the things that are part of that too. Just keep in mind, there's good and there's bad. There's things we do like and there's things that we don't like. There's things that match and there's things that mismatch. And very often they come bundled together. And that when the things come all bundled together, including our faith in Christ and our walk with God, that sometimes we don't like part of the package. But the package can be worth it. We just make our decision, though, in light of the entire package. So this is Pastor Scott Conway at Xian. The how-to real answers explained it all. Maybe it doesn't mean what they say. God trusting, Bible believing, saved by Jesus Church. Talking about package deals on our bump, on divorce, on sex, on men, on relationship, on marriage. God bless. I'll see you later.